Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Q&A. Sorry that last week's was 2 days late and this week's is 2 days early, but you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. I am all over the place lately and it's a good thing, not a bad thing. Hopefully I'll have a bunch of cool videos and a bunch more guides up as a result of all this. But anyway, let's just jump in and see what we got. First up, it looks like my answer to Adam Brady's question from last week got cut off. I don't know if that was an editing mistake or if I kept the wrong take, because whenever I screw up a take, I hit stop, delete the old one, and keep going. But who knows? I was really just I had just gotten home and I was scrambling to get this out and make sure I didn't miss a week's Q&A. So I don't know where the error happened. Sorry, Adam. But your question was about, are there any NES front-loading no-cut RGB mods? And the only ones out there that are available would be if you have a French NES, and then you would have to use the original French RGB cable. And of course you could do the NTSC switch with that and everything else, but that's actually something I'm going to be working on fairly soon. My buddy Chris is sending me one, so I'm excited to try that and see where I could go with it. The other thing that people were talking about, but I don't think ever made a prototype, is utilizing the bottom connector on the NES, because there's at least 4 unused pins, so you can get RGBS from that. So theoretically, you could have something that plugs into the bottom and then a ribbon cable that goes to the back of the NES, and have that to a breakout board to get your signals there. So that's something that we've talked about with different people, and I'm not sure if anybody did that yet, but it is definitely something I'm interested in, just obviously because I'm weirdly into all this preservation stuff. And you'd also asked about if you wanted all of your consoles HDMI modded. It really depends on what your main setup's going to be. So if you're only going into a flat screen, I would highly recommend either the high def NES mod or of course the analog NT Mini. Definitely would recommend the N64 HDMI mod, but of course there's nothing for Genesis or Super Nintendo. You could obviously get the Super NT, but that's not original consoles. But another way to do it, if there's even the slightest chance of you ever getting an RGB monitor, or if you have one, a lot of people just do everything RGB, use something like a G-SCART switch, so one of the outputs goes to the RGB monitor, and the other goes to the OSSC into a flat screen. And that way you could have one or the other without ever having to swap cables or anything like that. For me personally, I'll show it soon, but I have that exact same setup for the most part, and it always is going into my OLED TV, and I kind of just have a SCART cable laying there, and that way I could wheel over any of my RGB monitors, plug that in, and be able to use it that way if I ever need to. So sorry the question got cut off last week, and I will triple check that this question's the correct one this time. Firebrand X just wanted to check in about the NeoGeo AES stuff. I had teased some of the mods that were coming out last week, and I promise you, I really don't mean to tease these things, I can't really say anymore. But he was just wondering if there was anything wrong with his audio mod, and no, absolutely not, zero. In fact, if you're not happy with the way your AES sounds, I would absolutely look into doing the same thing Firebrand X did. And to be honest, I'm not sure if any of the newer mods for audio would do anything different. It's really the video stuff that's, there's some crazy stuff coming out. But as far as the audio sounds, you know, Firebrand X is a pretty discerning ear for this stuff, and I don't know if there would be any difference at all with the newer things coming out. So if you wanted to upgrade your audio on your NeoGeo AES, check out his link and give that a try. John Petro asked if I knew anybody working on a Sega CD optical drive emulator. And I know a few people looking into it, but it's just that at this moment. The people that I know certainly have the skills to go through with it. It's just a matter of will they actually do it. And I think a lot of people really hit 80% of a project and abandon it. And I don't really understand why, but that's just kind of the way it is with all projects in life. Also, he had commented a little bit about the GDEMU cloning fiasco, and I guess that team was trying to make, or hinted at making, a Sega CD optical drive emulator, but I have no affiliation with that team at all, and the one time I made even a remotely negative comment, or maybe not even negative, just even a neutral comment, I got hit hard by a bunch of fanboys, so I just try to keep that team at arm's length. Hopefully I'll be able to talk with the developer one day and really just see what their team's about and see what else they're working on. But I got very turned off by their overzealous fanboys, so I just follow the blog and stay at arm's length, but I don't really get into it too much. But You know, the bottom line is you can get as pissed off at me as you want, but they have products and they don't have enough to sell people. So maybe there's an excellent reason behind it. Maybe it's just because they don't have the manpower to support or even to ship it all. But I mean, the bottom line is they can't even get enough of their original product out. So I certainly wouldn't be holding your breath for them getting new products out. I mean, that's a harsh thing to say, but that's just the way it is, I guess. Sam F. Taylor had a good question about 480p on consumer-grade CRTs. So you could obviously get PVMs, BVMs, Mitsubishi Megaview, you know, just all the line of monitors that can take 240p, 480i, 480p, and higher. And then when you put those signals into those monitors, they're treated as the original signal. So 240p in comes on the tube as 240p and vice versa. The problem that Sam's talking about and that I've run into is a lot of the widescreen HD CRTs have video processing boards that take any signal that you plug into it and upscale it to the highest resolution that the CRT can handle. And a big problem with that is a lot of those TVs interpret 240p as 480i, then treats upscales or line doubles that. So the 240p images end up looking pretty terrible. So to answer your question, I don't know of one specifically, but would really love to know of any consumer grade TV that whatever signal you put in, that's what it's treated as. It's not just a full upscaler. I think a good thing to look for might be 480p 4x3 CRTs. So if anybody knows any model number, please let me know, and I'd love to try and find one. I'd especially like to find one that does exactly like the you know, the monitors do, in that whatever resolution you throw at it, it just accepts it and displays it. Although I have a fear that maybe if you put 240p into one of those, it would interpret it as 480i and just line double to 480p. So it's still going to look pretty bad, but maybe we can get to the bottom of it. As far as RGB modding those sets, I think a lot of those newer TVs didn't have that type of on-screen display where you could just tap into the RGBS signals. I think most of them used video chips. A lot of them, if you pull them apart, there's actually what looks like an ATI video card in there. But it's a great question, and I'd really like to get to the bottom of it. So if anybody that has model numbers of 480p CRTs, maybe we could check them out, because for something like PS2 or really any of those consoles that do mostly 480i but also 480p, those CRTs would be the best bet. Next, Jordan Chaston had a long list of questions, so I'm going to try to just answer them quickly and then maybe add some details after. First, he bought an Extron switch without audio and wants to know if you could add the Audio Phoenix ports. I don't think so. Maybe pop it open and see if there's a tray style where you could slide it in, but I think those are the ones that, with the different backs, it's just straight sheet metal. So I think you'd have to sell it and buy another one. He bought a UK CDI 210 because he wanted to use the factory RGB output, and it's supposed to be able to handle 100 to 240 volts, but when he tries to run it on US 120 volts, the CD drive does not spin up, and he wants to know if that might be voltage related. Well, first of all, if it's a power supply that can take that wide range of voltage, it shouldn't affect the CD at all. And I certainly wouldn't mess with anything on the power supply unless there was a simple switch. They're usually found on the outside of products though, and then you just toggle between 120 and 240 volts. But other than that, I wouldn't mess with the power supply at all, and I would actually assume there's something else wrong with the CDI. The good news is though, that model CDI, you could get, you could take the US version and just RGB mod that pretty easily. So if you're really into the CDI and you want to get crazy, maybe you could buy a broken US version and start swapping parts or something. And you could even utilize the motherboard and the SCART port of the PAL one. Next, he wants to know if I know of anybody doing video out solutions for the DS or 3DS. People say it's theoretically possible, but haven't gone down that road yet. It's something I know a few people are looking into, and I am really pushing for a 3DS version, because I mean that would be the ultimate solution for DS and 3DS games, and I really want to start. I would love to play those games on a nice big TV. The older and grumpier I get, the more I just want to enjoy my big TV and my stereo and not stare at a little screen that, you know, nowadays just reminds me of staring at my cell phone. Back when I was a kid, it was amazing because now every portable device is your own personal little gaming station, and Cousin Scott certainly feels that way still. But in my grumpy old man stage, you know, I got a couch, now I want to use it. I don't want to stare at my cell phone looking device anymore. And the last question, which is better for Xbox 360 on a PVM 20L5, VGA with a sync combiner or component cable? I would have to say just component cable if you're going to plug directly in, because the 20L5 accepts that with no conversion whatsoever. And it's always just easier to go one-to-one. There's obviously a million factors in this. If you have a better quality VGA cable and a crappy quality component cable, you'll definitely see a difference. You know, what if your VGA sync combiner is wrong? What if you use the wrong type of sync combiner? That adds more cost, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, if you're plugging directly one-to-one into it, I would just use a good quality component cable because it's easier. Or if you're looking to integrate it with an existing setup, use whatever that setup is. So if you have 7 consoles that are all RGB and you want to use the 360, get an RGB solution for that, meaning the VGA cable with the sync combiner over to SCART, and that way you don't ever have to plug anything in. It's all right there. So I think it covered all your questions. I hope I didn't skip over anything, but all good questions. Oh, Jordan had one last question. He asked if I know of any place to get some rare consoles like the X68000 or some of the FM Towns Marty Super Graphics. To be perfectly honest with you, no. I think that even people that don't know what they have anymore just Google search whatever it is that they have, see other people selling it for insane amounts of money, and then put theirs up for insane amounts of money. If you get lucky, you can find an honest game store, like the ones I always talk about. Brooklyn Video Games, Digital Press Games, and all of the different Retro Games Plus. There's a few other really great stores out there, but those are the ones that I frequent all the time. And when I find more, I'll definitely name drop those as well. But for me personally, I've either stumbled across them at those stores or through friends they'll sell it to me for a reasonable price. But I don't get lucky with that anymore. Even Justin, aka the Goodwill Hunter, doesn't stumble across as many great finds because I think a lot of people before dumping stuff off in the Goodwill just try to see if it's worth anything. So no, I don't have any good source for that. And if it's really important to you, just keep watching eBay and try to get something for a sort of reasonable price. Conrad Klaus was asking about NES audio mods and was wondering why I don't have some of them on my site. Is it because they're not safe? And I'll explain the whole problem. Hopefully I'll try to do this quickly, but there's 2 NES audio mods that I like to do. First and foremost nowadays is adding the Famicom expansion audio, which that alone is incredibly easy, and I believe that's the link that he put there, the Retro Fixes link. And that is totally safe to do. It's very easy, and you also need to make sure that the converter, the Famicom to NES converter you use, or whatever ROM cart you're using has the correct jumper set for that. So sometimes you need to add a wire, sometimes it's already on the board. You could find some of the guides online to trace it and see if it's working properly. But yeah, that's phenomenal, and anybody that plays Famicom games should absolutely do that mod, because some of especially the Castlevania games, there's a few of them that the expansion audio sounds amazing. But the other audio mod that I always do has issues if you do them both at the same time. And the NES has 2 basic audio channels. They're not stereo, they're just 2 channels that are then mixed into mono for the output side. And what I always like to do is separate those channels at about 50%. So it's not a full one only on the left speaker, one only on the right. It's about 50% blended, and it gives a fake stereo effect that I personally love in many games. Some it gets a little annoying, but Contra is just phenomenal. There's a bunch that sound great, and I even have a video demonstrating it. The reason I never got around to putting those guides on my site is because there's no way at the moment, that I know of at least, to do both mods at the same time without causing some kind of issues. And it's because it's, both need some kind of resistance in order. So the stereo mod, I used to use potentiometers, which add resistance to I'm oversimplifying, but the potentiometers change the way the signal is, and that allows you to separate it. But as soon as you put the Famicom expansion audio into that, it changes the resistance of all three lines and screws everything up. So what people who are smarter than me told me was that the only proper way to handle this is with a full digital audio amp, which some people had even posted schematics online and to show how to do it. It was just a little out of my reach at that time, and then I just keep forgetting to go back and test it. But the good proper way to do it on NES consoles would be to take the expansion channel and both of the normal channels, put it through a digital audio amp, and then do the mixing on the output side. So that way you don't have to mess with the resistance, it doesn't screw up the levels, and maybe you could even have little dials on the output of the audio amp to change. Maybe you don't want it 50%, maybe you want it 75 or only 25, or maybe you want the expansion audio louder or quieter. But that would be the overall perfect way to do it. And a few years ago, I had every intention of figuring that out and then writing a guide for it, and then it just got bumped back in priorities. So the one guide that you showed, and I'll just make sure that this is the one. Yeah, so that's just the Famicom expansion audio, and that's correct. Just adding the resistor seems to be, you know, what a lot of people do, but that will not harm your console. That will add a pretty cool layer of audio for games that support it. Not all games, of course. And it's something that I feel like every NES fan that plays Famicom games on their NES should definitely have, because some of the Famicom expansion audio games are pretty awesome. So hopefully that wasn't too long, but there was a lot more to that story, and hopefully somebody would make a digital audio amp board. I think if somebody sold it, I think a lot of people would be interested in buying it, but who knows? Let's see if somebody has time to do it. Pete from M-Monkey was asking about one of those 161-in-1 NeoGeo Carts, and wondering if some of the fixes people had found fixed the voltage issues or if they still might be dangerous. Now, for anybody that doesn't know about this, I'll do a very, very quick run through. Renee from DB Electronics last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, tested a ton of different carts and did full analysis using a scope, using the proper measurement tools to do this. And he found that a lot of the carts, like the Crix carts, don't operate at the exact proper voltage, and while it's not good practice, it's very unlikely that it's going to do damage to your consoles. Just something to be aware of. But some of the ones like the NES multi-carts and the NeoGeo multi-carts, obviously not the Dark Soft or the Neo SD, we're talking about the Chinese 161-in-1 or 100-in-1, stuff like that. He found that those were actually very damaging to your consoles, and I mean, there is almost guaranteed that if you used it long enough, it'll significantly shorten the life of your console. And as far as I know, I think he repaired his. And I think there were a few people online that were repairing theirs and used scopes to verify. So you posted a link to a forum. I did skim through that. I wasn't familiar with that thread, but I didn't see any scope plots and I didn't see any hard data. I'm not saying it wasn't there. I'm just, excuse me, in my quick skimming, I didn't see it. So as long as somebody posts the results and shows the voltages, then I think it would be fine. And it's got to be possible to fix some of them. Just other ROM carts, I mean, it would require a full redesign of the circuit board itself. And you know, this is an interesting thing because, especially for any Neo Geo owners, original games are unfathomably expensive. The ROM carts themselves, I think, compared to the games, are fairly priced, especially for what goes into them. But it's still like $500. So you can get one of these 161-in-1 carts for around $100. And maybe that has all the games that you want on it. So it's certainly enough reason to look into it. But I just, I hope if somebody posts a guide somewhere, or my site would be open soon enough for people that just want to contact me and do a post or two. Anybody that's interested in doing that could just show their work. That's pretty much going to be the only prerequisites for stuff on my site, is you have to show your work to prove your results. You can't just play the game and figure out that it's fine. But I really hope that a lot of those carts are taken apart and really shown why the voltage is wrong and how to fix it if possible, because some of those are really good investments for people that want to just start getting into it. And once again, Neo Geo is pretty much the only console out there where I'm all for piracy. You know, whatever you got, whatever ROM cart, whatever multi-cart, go for it. Because even if you own those games, even if you're a collector and you love them, there's no freaking way I want to play a game that's worth thousands of dollars. I want to leave that on a shelf and never touch it and just admire that I have it. I want to use flash carts or multi-carts and go from there. But it's a good question, and I hope we get to the bottom of it with actual data to back it up. Dave Sobel asked, what's the current state of modding for the Atari 5200 and Atari 7800? The 5200 has an excellent RGB mod called the Sophia Kit, and there's even a DVI board available as well. So that's absolutely the correct solution if you're looking for the highest quality video output on the 5200. I don't know of anything on the 7800. If you're able to get an analog NT Mini, I believe that core is on there, so you can get HDMI and RGB, but I don't know of any kit other than composite and S-Video for the original hardware itself. But I'll put a link to the Sophia board in the description, because for your 5200, absolutely that's the way to go. Min Tong had asked if Red Guy has a donation link or PayPal, because he wanted to really support him for all the work that he did on the Super FX chip support and now the SA1 support on the ST to SNES. And at the moment, I don't think he has anything. I know some people had asked him to start a Patreon, and if I'm remembering correctly, I think his response was that of many other people, in that they like treating this as a hobby, and putting some kind of monetary thing on it would make them feel like they have to produce. When, although some of this work is, in my opinion, way above hobby grade, the bottom line is it's still something that they want to do when they're in the mood to do it, so that they still enjoy doing it. It doesn't feel like something they're forced to do. And I think that is the attitude of many, many developers. But I mean, I'm on your page because it puts fans like me, and I guess fans like you as well, in an awkward position, because we want all of this content, we love what they do, and we would like to help, but there's no way to do so. So that's a good question. Maybe a tip jar or something, a virtual tip jar would be a good way to do it. So I'll see if I could talk to him about that. And I also, I think he was too busy to do any kind of interview, but if it's an open invitation, anytime he wants, he is always welcome on the show. And I would love to do, whether it's just a 5-minute, hey, check out these features, or whether it's an actual interview, or maybe even just have him on for a let's play and play one of his FX games or something. But it's always an open invitation to Red Guy. Also, thank you to Red Guy for all your work, and I'll see if I could ask, because I think a donation link would be a great idea. Well, that's it for this week's Q&A. Sorry for all of the dates getting screwed up. I'm really trying to do these every Friday, but I'm certainly not trying to make it seem like I'm pushing the Patreon stuff aside. It just really is the way the schedule has fallen the past few weeks. So hopefully next Friday it'll be back to normal, and we'll just continue on from there. But as always, thank you so much to everybody for all your support. Thank you to everybody that participates in the Q&A, and feel free to ask absolutely anything. If there's too many one week, I'll just try to get to the best ones, and and go back and get the other ones the following week. But fire away. Anything you got, I'm really happy to hear from you. So as always, thank you so much for all your support, and I'll see you next time.